later on. Today we will discuss Shopify Markets, as that has been a topic that has been requested most from you. So great to see there's this house full of people. During this whole session, please send us questions. On the right side, you will see the chat window. You can send us questions. And by the end of this session, we will go through as many questions as we only can. Moving on, let's look at what Woolman offers, what we are offering as a host. Woolman is Europe's largest Shopify Plus partner. We have been in business for over 6 years, and we were awarded by the Innovator of the Year award by Shopify last year, thanks to our Ellis, which is a data management platform. Ellis.is, you can find more about our data side. Then what people typically know us of is that we have produced and published over 400 Shopify stores, and that we have been in the business for kind of a long time. Our task is to help our brands, mainly D2C brands, hand in hand to succeed, get global, be profitable. And one of our newest additions is Taiga theme. So in Shopify's theme store, you can see a premium 2.0 theme that is Taiga theme, and it's used by kind of a good amount of our top brands. This is everything about Woolman. Then moving on to the agenda of today, we will cover Shopify Markets. We are very happy to have Ben here. We will do soon introductions. Then we will talk about domains and languages, selling different products in different countries. How does that go? What about Shopify Payments and multicurrency, warehousing, shipping methods? Then quickly discuss about Shopify Markets Pro. And finally, look at what's ahead for 2023 when it comes to Shopify Markets. What is something that merchants should be aware, whether that you are already on Shopify Markets, you are considering it, or you are considering to change platform and want to utilize Shopify Markets as a key part of your actual solution. And finally, by the end of this session, we will have time for questions and answers. So I will remind you, kindly send questions in the chat window during the whole session if you have any, and we will then tackle them with Ben one by one, as many as we only can today. Next slide, please. Ben, we are super glad to have you here. So you are a senior solutions engineer at Shopify. Could you kindly tell us about your background and what is your relationship with Shopify Markets?
Sure. Thanks very much for having me. So yes, as Mikko said, senior solutions engineer at Shopify, primarily work in sort of UKI and Northern Europe markets. So my role is I typically get involved when a sales representative is working with a merchant who's looking to move on to Shopify Plus, and there are particularly complex or technical needs. And so we get involved as solutions engineers to try to navigate the kind of how would Shopify solve this problem for the merchant? Is it even possible? How might we approach it? And I suppose setting the business up to get the most value out of Shopify ongoing and covering as many technical needs as possible. And my background is I moved to Shopify in the summer last year, so I've not really been here long, but previous to that, I was working for a Plus agency for many years in a whole variety of roles. So I've run lots of migrations from a whole range of platforms onto Shopify Plus, and then also helped a lot of brands internationalize using either expansion store model or Shopify Markets or mix of the two. So I suppose quite a lot of internationalization experience. We're now working with a lot of brands who are looking to go multinational. So it's kind of day-to-day involvement in Shopify Markets, as it were.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ben, for being here. My name is Mikko Rekola. I'm the Chief Evangelist here at Woolman. I've been here for 5+ years, helped more than 200 of our customers. And I will be your host today. So we will talk about the topics together with Ben. And I think it's time to get started. So next slide. And Ben, how would you describe Shopify Markets? What is the basic structure, where Shopify Markets can help, and when it's typically implemented?
Sure. So broadly, there are two ways to internationalize using Shopify Plus. So either you utilize a single store model, and you'd leverage Shopify Markets to deliver localized, currency converted, translated content to different markets, to use Shopify terminology, different regions. And that can range from a market could be an individual country to a group of countries brought together into a market. Or the second route of how you might internationalize with Shopify is through the expansion store model. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, but we're moving the needle quite quickly in terms of the capabilities of Shopify Markets and the ability to do a lot more of and cover a lot more of your international needs through Shopify Markets, rather than having to go down the expansion store model. And we often also see a kind of hybrid approach where you might have a few expansion stores for key international markets for a whole variety of reasons, which we can talk about, but then use Shopify Markets to deliver sort of localized experiences within other markets as well.
Great. Do you need to be on Shopify Plus to utilize Markets, or is it available for all Shopify plans? And is there anything you should consider when thinking about Markets in the first place?
Yeah, good. And actually, that's probably a habit I've got into. So feel free to just ignore me when I say it. But I talk about Plus pretty much the whole time because that's my main role. But no, you don't need to be on Plus to use Shopify Markets. Shopify Markets is available to all Shopify plans. There's of course limitations as you move further down through the different plans towards basic and so on. There's a whole variety of different things you can't do with Shopify Plus. It unlocks the full feature set of Shopify Markets. The only, I suppose, a nuance is the way multi-licensing works. Shopify Plus allows you to have 10 under the single license, have 10 transactional Shopify stores called expansion stores. And importantly, you can have even more that are not transactional for staging environments or developer previews or whatever it is. So that's often a driver. If you're running 3 Shopify Advanced stores, it narrows the gap quite significantly for the commercials to switching to Plus before all of the additional features that come with Plus.
Lovely. Thanks, Ben. And then moving on to sort of like the URL structure. This is again something that is asked from us a lot. So once you get started with the Markets, what about the URL structure? What should you consider here, and where does Shopify Markets help? And is this like pre-built, or what should a merchant or a brand do?
Great. So as I'm sure you're all aware, the URL structure for internationalization is a big consideration. You kind of have the gold standard of aiming for CCTLDs for all of your international markets, but then the realities of that actually being feasible to manage from a cost perspective, but also, do you even have the CCTLDs for all of your individual regions? Then you've got subdomains or subdirectories. With a key thing about Shopify Markets is that you can now use all 3 for your international structure, right? So Shopify Markets allows you can connect multiple domains to Shopify, and you can then have different markets assigned to different CCTLDs. You could then also have subdomains within that structure as well, or you could just have the whole thing running on subdirectories. And that's a key differentiator, because with the expansion store model, where you have multiple individual Shopify stores, you can't have a subdirectory URL structure because Shopify admin, the Shopify instance, has to sit on the top level domain, so the CCTLD or the subdomain. But you can see a couple of screenshots here. This is sort of how Shopify Markets, how their interface works for managing the URLs within markets. So literally you'll spin up a market in Shopify. You can then go into it and edit the domain of how the domain for that market is associated, whether it's through a subfolder, or you can see the option to add a primary domain or whatever it is. And then go even deeper into how languages within that are managed if you're serving multiple languages within an individual market. Canada is a classic example where most merchants will serve both English and French.
Great. And I think that we can move on to the next slide, where we talk more about the languages. And this is again something that is asked a lot from us. So what can Shopify Markets offer here?
Sorry, I was just reading, getting distracted by the questions, which I suppose we'll address at the end. So I need to just not watch them coming in. Great. So language translation. I want to kind of distinguish. No, actually, let's talk about language translation in the same way as we talk about content localization. But to just initially talk about it, there is a nuance here, right? Because you might go beyond translation to actually localize the content specifically to the market and say something different, not just translate what you're saying. So initially, you have the concept of translations across Shopify Markets, where you can, in this screenshot, there are 6 translations available. You can then specify which of those translations allocate to individual markets. So it might be that on the left we've got you've got a list of markets there, and you can see which language is associated with which. So you might, like we talked about earlier, you might have both French and English assigned to the Canadian market, whereas the North American market, you might only have English served. Beyond the translation kind of capability, you also have the ability to localize content. So we're going to talk about Shopify's Translate and Adapt app a little bit in a moment, I think.
Great. When we talk about these, what do you need to know about the app part? As example, Shopify's Translate and Adapt. Here you can see some options that are on the market, but quite many have chosen the one that is developed by Shopify. So how easy it is to implement? Are there any things that you should consider before installing it? Any advice, Ben?
Yeah, great. So as shown here, that there are a whole range of translation apps available that integrate with Shopify. It gets a little bit complicated just because of the pace at which Shopify's roadmap has moved here, I think. So it's worth kind of narrating. You have the long-standing translation apps like Langify. There's another one I've used quite a lot in the past called Weglot, and so on. And all of those tools have had to adapt quite quickly as Shopify rolled out new capabilities and sort of native internationalization capabilities. Shopify's first-party app, Translate and Adapt, we rolled that out summer last year, I'm going to say, something like that. So that is a built by Shopify app that you can install on the store for free. It comes as part of Shopify, and you can localize content. So even beyond translations, you can localize the content within the store. Now, a nuance with, we'll talk more about that in a minute, a nuance with the different translation apps in the App Store is that not all of them are compatible with Shopify Markets. And that's just because of how they're architected. And I suppose some of it will be, how long has the app been around compared to how long Shopify Markets has been around, and how they interact, and whether or not they have adapted their architecture to integrate with Shopify Markets. So tools like Langify now they've started to pick up and use the Markets API to interact with it. Some of them won't, and will just kind of serve translations over the top via JavaScript or whatever over the top of the store's front end, and not actually interact with markets. So there's a bit of a nuance there. You need to be careful as you select. If you're wanting to go with a third-party translation tool, which there might be reasons, like for example, I worked with a merchant who was using a translation agency, and that agency had an integration with Langify, which meant that they wanted the merchant to use Langify because then they could manage translations automatically through their systems, and it automatically pushed to be reviewed in their front end. Often there might be specific bits of functionality that Shopify Translate and Adapt doesn't have that you might need or want, and therefore end up going with a third-party translation app. But in terms of the most neatly integrated and what will always remain the most up-to-date, as it were, with Shopify's latest capabilities, that's where a first-party app like Shopify Translate and Adapt comes in, and we're investing pretty heavily in that as well at the moment. It's moving it's moving really fast, and the roadmap's quite exciting in terms of its capabilities.
Great, thanks, Ben. What about if we have a look on that on the next slide? So could you slightly just explain what it does and what do we actually see here?
Yeah, great. So this is an example where a merchant has Shopify Translate and Adapt installed. They have gone into the no-code theme editor to customize their front end. They've then clicked, there's a button called localize that is available if you have Translate and Adapt installed. You can then click it, and that opens up this interface, which allows you to choose which market you want to localize the content to. And then in that right column, you can see you can adapt the German content that will be served to the German market through Shopify Markets. And what you can see here is it's even beyond just written content now as well. You can see you can localize images. So you could actually just have different banner images or whatever it is on the storefront, depending on the market. So, I mean, use cases for that. I've worked with fashion brands in the past that they need, they might have a Middle Eastern market that needed more modest model shots, was an actual use case, right? They actually wanted sort of more modest shots and more modest photography for that market, which you can now do with this kind of tool. So you assign a different image to that market. You can see that there's a media link bit there where you could actually have buttons navigate to different parts of the site. So great for like market specific landing pages or whatever, if you want to go even further than the kind of top level content localization, have specific pages. And then of course written content, where you could change the title there, summer 2023, you could change that for the specific content block. And then on the left, you've got that whole list of all the different content areas across Shopify that you can then go in and localize per market. And then I suppose the last note, top right, you've got this auto translate capability, which helpful to some degree, but it uses Google's translation API to then automatically translate, and you can then go in and amend things. So it can streamline the process quite significantly.
Fantastic, really good examples, Ben, and very much important to notice that this is not only about the language, but you can also edit the content part here. And we recommend that merchants will explore with this if you're doing it by yourself. And then moving on to the next topic, which is actually very much linked, is the geolocation experience. Again, a topic where we have received tons of questions. So first of all, Ben, could you explain us what is the geolocation sort of like experience all about? How markets function with this? What about SEO aspect? And is there room or need for any customization? How does this all work?
Great. And I suppose the kind of the high level goal here is get the user on the right version of the site. And there's multiple ways in which you can achieve that. Historically, a lot of people will have done auto redirecting, so it becomes impossible for a user to land on the wrong version, as it were. That is now illegal in the EU. You're not allowed to geo-block, as it were. So what most brands are implementing now, we find, is a kind of pop-up scenario like you see here, where if you do end up landing on the wrong site, you get a pop-up saying, we actually have a country-specific version or whatever it is. Would you like to go there? One click, yes, you're taken there straight away. So that there's a first-party app in Shopify called, I think it's called Geolocation or something like that, which can serve this pop-up to users automatically, integrates with markets, so it knows which market the user should be on and which market they are on, and then whether or not to correct or let them just override and ignore it. There's then the kind of next bits like the SEO aspect. So you want to have an hreflang tag implementation in place to make sure that in the search engine page, the user is initially being presented the correct version dependent on where they are. So if I in the UK search one of your sites, I would automatically be delivered the .co.uk if you have it, or if it's a UK subdirectory or whatever, based on the fact that I am searching from the UK. With Shopify Markets, that is automatically handled. Shopify just takes care of the hreflang tag implementation. So when you click a couple of buttons to launch a new market in Shopify, it will automatically build out the hreflang tag implementation to make sure that everything's pointed to the correct place. And then I suppose where the custom stuff comes in is if you have a expansion store model where you have multiple individual stores, or you're with a hybrid model where you have some expansion stores and Shopify Markets in some, then you need to make sure that you're manually putting in your hreflang tag implementation for the expansion stores to make sure that it correctly points to all of the market stores that automatically, front ends that automatically have the URL, the hreflang tag implementation in place.
Great. And this is now something that if you have been selling with one Shopify Plus store globally, and then you are thinking about new languages and implementing markets, so this is a new thing for you. And is it so that, how does this actually work? Is it so that it reaches the IP address and based on that, it then tries to throw you to the right location? What's sort of like the technology behind, or anything else you should want to know about the whole geolocation experience?
Yeah, good question. So I think that GeoIP lookup for initially putting you in the right place, and the like giving you the pop-up to present you the right market to go to. It will then also take into account your browser language, because it might be that, I don't know, if I have my browser set to German, but I'm in England, things get confusing as to which version of the site you should get put on. So it will take into account the browser language you have in place as well. I don't know exactly the logic, to be honest. I'm pretty sure it's GeoIP for the right market, and then the language will be chosen based on your browser language. And then, of course, you're cookied if you make a choice, right? So if you've made a choice on which market to go to, the next time you load the site up, it will automatically, based on your cookie, it will put you in the right place. I think Great. Just while we're talking about the kind of, I don't know if this is the right time to talk about it, but the kind of content localization aspects and what you're serving to a user based on the geolocation they're in. One of the key things, I suppose, importantly with Shopify is the ability to, we talk a lot about how we build into the platform what 80% of our merchants need 80% of the time. And then the other 20% is the really complicated bit that's specific to everyone, because to individuals, because every business is unique, right? So what we then build is we try to build the kind of pressure release complexity parts where you can extend the platform and build on top of it to customize to your exact needs. So I've been involved in a whole load of implementations where we've built using Shopify's front end. And then the native language called Liquid, that's part how you build front ends in Shopify. You can access what region or what market the user is interacting with and tailor the front end to them anyway, right? So you can go, if Shopify's native translate and adapt feature or anything you're using does not quite deliver exactly what you need, well, the capability is already there to build out custom components for market specific localization, right? So I don't know, you might have a content block, like a section in Shopify's no code editor that has some tick boxes to specify which markets this section does apply to and which ones it doesn't, so that if a user loads up and is on a market that isn't supposed to have that content, then they won't see it. And importantly, that's all server side. So there's no kind of, it appears and then it's hidden through JavaScript or anything, because Liquid is a server side rendering language.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Some really important points there. And then moving on next, let's go and talk about selling different products in different countries. And if I look at like markets and the feedback we have received from our customers, I think this is probably the one that is raising most questions, or people are not quite sure how this works. So could you kindly sort of like explain how does it work? Is this even possible? Is the first question we have been asked, and what should you consider when setting this up?
Great. And this is hot off the press, right? We launched this capability 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, at the Shopify Winter Editions. So this is the ability to now have market specific products, right? So you can see here in that publishing column in the middle of the screenshot where you're in a market view here. So you're inside the Canadian market by the looks of things. You then can see your whole product list, and you can specify whether or not it is published in that market and available to that user. So what that now natively enables is the ability to have specific product lists per market, whereas previously I've been involved in loads of implementations where we did this, but it was through custom sort of theme customization, where we then hid certain products based on front-end logic. So it's really nice to now just have this natively in the platform.
Great. So if I would super much like simplify this, I would have a fashion brand selling boots, and I would only sell winter boots to those countries where there is a true winter. So I can now do it here without needing to mess up with the theme code or do any additional customizations, correct?
Exactly. So you could now, right, you could have your boot as a single product in Shopify. You could then, using translate and adapt, have entirely different product content per market. You could then specify which markets it is published to or not using the products by market functionality. And you could then specify an exact pricing list, an exact price for that product for that market, whether that be a fixed converted where you specify the conversion rate, or just a price list where you specify the exact price.
Wonderful.
So you can go quite granular now.
Great. This is a really nice addition. And then moving on further, let's go towards the payments, paying and everything related. I noticed that there are already a few questions related to this, and I received also a few questions before the session in advance. So let's go through Shopify Payments and the multi-currency. So first question is that what does Shopify Markets enable? What about localized payment methods in practice? And then the question that we get asked a lot, especially in the Nordics, can you use third-party payment providers with Shopify Payments and everything related? Ben, how would you approach this one?
So I think the first thing to do here, I get really confused by payments as well, by the way. I think it's just a confusing world, right? To pan right back, a prerequisite for using Shopify Markets to convert, to show different currencies on the front end, is that you are using our payment gateway, Shopify Payments, right? So you can use Shopify Markets without using Shopify Payments, but it limits you. You can't then use currency conversion. So that's I think worth noting, and why I suppose we're talking about Shopify Payments and multi-currency at the same time is because they're both required, or Shopify Payments is required for the multi-currency aspect. And importantly, that doesn't mean you can't show currency conversion on the front end without Shopify Payments. You can, but once you then hit the checkout, it's back to the base currency of the store, the single currency, and then the user is billed in that base currency. Whereas with Shopify Payments and the native multi-currency capability, the user browses in their specific currency with the specific pricing you have allocated, goes through the checkout with that specific currency, and is then billed in their bank account in that specific currency. It's then converted at payout to you back into the base currency. So it's a much more seamless user experience. Localized payment methods is an initiative that we're rolling out and investing quite a lot in now. So we'll see more and more stuff come, where based on, if you have Shopify Payments enabled, based on the country that the user is browsing in, they might see dynamic different payment methods that are tailored, that are contextual to them based on the country they are in. Now, it's quite I suppose it's quite a narrow list at the moment, but it's an area we're going to see grow in EMEA and in Europe and so on. But like you can find it on Shopify's help documentation, like what exactly the localized payment methods are. But what it will mean is they would show to a specific user in a specific case.
Great. That was really good to tackle that one. And if you have more questions regarding the payments, please use the chat box here, and we'll cover as many as we only can by the end of this session. And then moving on to next topic, warehousing and Shopify Markets. So what is the current status when it comes to stock and logistics with Shopify Markets? Do you need to have your own warehouse? What if you have multiple warehouses? Or what if you are using 3PL partners, either in one of the countries or multiple markets? How does it all play out? Anything you should be aware of before making the decision to go with markets?
Yeah, great. So this is where we need to talk about Shopify's sort of multi-warehouse or multi-inventory locations functionality called locations, where you can now have up to 1,000 locations on any Shopify plan, which are effectively different inventory pools. So it might be that you have a location for a couple of for one of your physical retail stores, you have a location for your warehouse, you have a location for another warehouse, and so on. So I suppose simply the answer to can you have multiple warehouses is yes, but of course it's a yes with conditions, as yeses always are, I suppose. But we've just rolled out this feature called order routing, where you can specify sort of slightly more complex fulfillment prioritization per market. So you can now within Shopify Markets say, if someone orders from here in this market, it can only fulfill from this warehouse, or it needs to prioritize fulfilling from this warehouse, and if it's not in stock, fulfill from this one. You can then also, using shipping zones and all of the native Shopify shipping engine, you can then say, go even further and say this product only fulfills from this warehouse, or if you could use some of Shopify's checkout automation tools like Shopify Functions to go, well, if the customer is ordering from this country, don't show this shipping option from this warehouse because we don't want to cross fulfill across the border, or whatever it is. Confusing world, but I suppose I encourage, so have a look at in Shopify Editions, there's a new order routing stuff that's all we'll talk a lot about it. There's all of the Shopify location stuff and fulfillment prioritization, and then there's all of the shipping stuff, and they all kind of mesh together to build out this now really quite comprehensive Shopify Markets capabilities for tailoring your fulfillment needs to individual markets.
Great. Thank you, Ben, for all the clarifications here. And I have to emphasize here that if you need help with this part, you can always be in touch with Woolman. So we have been handling these cases even this week, several. So this starts to be, I guess, more of the complex side of the markets. So if you need help with the actual implementation, or you're unsure about this or unsure about your current setup, you can always be in touch with us. So we are delighted to make it happen and make sure that you're using Shopify Markets the right way, also when it comes to logistics. Moving on to the next slide, and what about the taxes then? So how does Shopify Markets work in terms of taxes and duties? Is this something that comes somewhat automatically? Do you need to manually edit this? And what happens if you already are on Plus and you have done some of the tasks here? How to approach the tax topic?
Brilliant. It's getting really exciting now, isn't it, with taxes? So I think Shopify has a native tax engine, right? So you can specify tax rates per country or per market now. You can then also go more granular into tax rates based on individual products, or whether a product is taxable or not. And with Shopify Markets, that just kind of expands, right, where you have that per market, you can build in different taxes and duties. In terms of the question on what are the changes if you're already on Plus, I think it can get, I've heard people get confused where it's almost talked like Shopify Markets is talked about almost like a separate plan to Shopify Plus, which it's not, right? Shopify Plus is a kind of almost full feature set of Shopify built for SMB and enterprise. which gives you everything. And Shopify Markets is a capability within Shopify, all plans, but Shopify Plus unlocks the full capability of Shopify Markets. So the answer to what changes if you're already on Shopify Plus is there are not necessarily any, right? But if you were to launch a new market, you would then open up the capability of specifying tax rates and so on for that particular market, so that it was correct for the user as they proceeded through.
Good. And that's something that we've noticed, that you also must check this with your logistics partner and shipping partner if they support this. So there we have helped our customers in multiple cases. And then when moving on to a related topic is Shopify Markets Pro. And that is something that has been a bit confusing to merchants in Europe, because Shopify has been marketing this a lot and pushing this a lot. They have been talking lately a lot about Shopify Markets Pro. So what is Shopify Markets Pro? How does it differ from the normal Shopify Markets? And is this even available for merchants in Europe right now?
Yeah, it's not available for us yet, right? It's not available. I'm really hoping, my understanding is it's coming this year, but I'm not certain of that. Don't hold me to it. I know this is now recorded, which is a shame, but there we go. But yes, I'm hoping this is coming to us quite soon. Very simply, the difference between Shopify Markets and Markets Pro is the merchant of record thing, right? So Shopify Markets Pro is a merchant of record solution that just means that a whole load of the liabilities that you would take on if you're selling internationally are just absorbed by Shopify as the merchant of record. So it just kind of simplifies and streamlines the whole internationalization process for you. But of course, the trade-off is the fees are more substantial than if you were transacting with Shopify Markets and handling a lot of that by yourself. The kind of key difference with Global E, and of course, I don't know how much you know about the sort of market, as it were, but Shopify invested quite heavily into Global E, and Global E have been involved in the Shopify Markets Pro solution. But if you go with Global E, who now integrate with Shopify Markets really nicely, that's where with Global E you get this kind of service package around it and consultants and so on, which would differentiate it from Shopify Markets Pro, which is a bit more of a kind of self-serve solution, as it were. So that it obviously, without, we don't have full details of what Markets Pro is going to look like for us in Europe, but that's what we're seeing at the moment, is that the differentiation between the two is the service and the customer service around it for you as a business. You would get that additional consultative approach with Global E that you wouldn't get with Markets Pro. But again, you pay for it element.
Very good, thank you. And then just like noticing this, that there are a few of you who already are in the US, or you have a US company. We have been also helping you with this. So please contact us if you need further information regarding Markets Pro. Then we can connect you with the right person in Shopify Send, and are delighted to help. Let's move to actually one of the last topics of today. And this was something that we initially discussed with Ben, that what about the roadmap? So let's not talk about the roadmap, but let's talk about what's up ahead. So what is coming in the upcoming months? And from my own personal background, I have been impressed by the pace when you have been releasing new features. I think that's fantastic, and I want to sort of like congratulate you for that. But what about the remaining 2023? What's up ahead? Something that you can sort of like explain to the listeners here. Anything that is on your like sort of like personal favorites list, or anything that is very, very essential for listeners to understand and know at this point?
Yeah, sure. And just to jump back on the pace of innovation from Shopify, we were chatting about it in one of the calls before. Even working within Shopify, I sometimes find it hard to keep up with the pace at which features roll out, which is quite exciting. I heard a stat that our R&D team, Shopify's Shopify's R&D team, is larger than sort of the top 3 or 4 of our competitors' R&D teams combined, and bigger than the headcount of some competitors as a whole. So it allows us to move really fast, but that also makes it really hard to stay on top of the feature set. I think from a really high level, what we're now seeing is whereas historically the way to internationalize with Shopify for larger businesses would have been with the expansion store model, we're now really quite quickly moving the needle on where you're having to go down an expansion route because of limitations with Shopify Markets. So that needle is moving quite quickly, and we'll see investment continue to go into Shopify Markets to move the needle further. I don't think we'll ever be in a scenario where the expansion store model is eradicated, as it were, because you're always going to have the use cases. Like we worked with businesses who they might have a regional team who want complete control over their individual store, or even franchised it out or whatever it is. In those scenarios, an expansion store model makes a lot of sense for you because it kind of segregates it really neatly. But what I think we'll see is that the needle will keep moving. The kind of scenarios where you need to go down the expansion store model will reduce, and you'll be able to manage a lot more increasingly from a single Shopify admin using Shopify Markets. Personally, a couple of the things that I'm excited about, because they've been pain points in the past, are things like pushing content localization even further. So at the moment, you can localize, you can, as we saw, you can localize written text, images, links. What will be coming soon will be things like translating URLs, like localizing the URLs for different products or whatever it is for different markets, and then things like layout specific management. So building the stuff we talked about with like sections, being able to have them in different orders or whatever it is for different markets, all of that will eventually become native into Shopify's Markets capability. So I think we'll work towards this point where you truly have unique storefronts for different markets. So I think that'll be coming. Shopify Markets Pro in Europe, exciting, a lot of clarity to I think to be had in terms of what that actually looks like for us on the ground. Europe is exponentially more complicated from an internationalization perspective than the US, and I think that is one of the reasons that Markets Pro isn't here yet. And then the multi-currency payout thing, I think this is quite close, but again, it's quite complicated. The key thing is that at the moment, a single Shopify store can only pay out to the base currency, right? So if you have your store set in euros, your payouts, regardless of the currency that a user has purchased in on Shopify Markets, your payout will be converted and come to you in euros. We're about to launch the capability for Canada to pay out in both USD and Canadian dollars, which is an amazing milestone because that means it will come. We're kind of cracking the functionality of it, and it will therefore hopefully come soon to Europe, the ability to pay out into multiple currencies. And that, I mean, for us, that's often just been a reason why Markets isn't an option for our merchants, because they might have separate business entities or whatever it is for different regions, and then immediately you need to be able to pay out into different currencies. Yeah, those are the things I'm excited for. Oh, also as well, if you're using Shopify POS, Shopify Retail, the retail product, which again has moved a very long way even in just the last 2 years. But at the moment, that's single currency only. That will be coming to. That will integrate with Markets and enable the ability to use Shopify POS with Markets, so you can have different currencies for your different regional stores.
Really good. That would be definitely my personal favorite. Please, Ben, go on.
Yeah. Come on. Sorry, just one more thing I'm excited about, and is the whole. So one of the things we found is it's all very well that Shopify can move so fast as a product, right? But part of what is making Shopify a market leader is our partner ecosystem and all of the tooling providers that build tools that can plug into Shopify and extend it, right? And they can't always move as fast, or they're working with other platforms as well. And so actually we're rolling out all of these new features, and they're not always compatible with third-party tooling, right? So I don't know, an email marketing tool that currently plugs into Shopify seamlessly. We've rolled out Markets, and that's all very well, but then it might be that the email tool can still only work in a single currency integrated with Shopify rather than capturing like the multi-currency aspect. And I think I saw a question around like things like Google Ads accounts and all that kind of stuff. Like they're all scenarios where, well, that's reliant on Google enhancing their integration with Shopify, which they've built to be able to deliver different ads accounts to different markets within Shopify. So what I'm excited for all of that to keep progressing, which it is. We're seeing a lot more third-party tools integrate with Shopify Markets. But yeah, there's more to come with that, I think.
Great. Thank you for all of these insights. I think that we can move on to the last part of this webinar. So you have sent us plenty of questions. I think that we can go those through with Ben. We'll try to cover quite many of these if we only can, if we start from the very beginning. So are there any restrictions depending on the Shopify plan? First question there.
Where can you see them? Yeah. So on the Shopify pricing page, there are the 3 plans, basic, Shopify and advanced, and it outlines what the different features are. And if you dig into them, you'll see information on like what's opened up as you proceed through each plan in terms of international capability, which ties into markets and so on. And then there will be some areas in the Shopify help documentation where you can see things like plus only. And that will be really clear when it's a plus only feature. It's really clear on in the help documentation.
Great. Then there has been like few questions regarding the translation app. So can I use any translation app, or has it to be a specific translation app that is supported by Shopify Markets, and how to proceed, or should I just use Translate and Adapt?
So I think that was one of the questions I got distracted by, and probably therefore answered, where that was the thing around not all of the translation tools on Shopify's marketplace, Shopify's app marketplace, integrate and are compatible with Shopify Markets, which is where sometimes just using Shopify's Translate and Adapt tool is going to be your best option. But then some of them you might need additional functionality, so you just need to keep an eye. I don't know what translation app you're currently using, Estelle, but it might be that already integrates with Markets, or it might not. Some of them do, some of them don't.
Great. Then there was one question from Simon regarding the payment gateway. Simon, is there anything you still would like to know regarding this, or did we manage to answer the question?
Yeah, so on the standard store, we get the ability to use one primary payment gateway, and then I think you can use multiple on alternative and manual methods. Is that still the case with Marketplace?
Yeah, so it's only Shopify Payments that can deliver currency conversion for different markets, right? So if you're using Shopify Payments and serving to a market that is not in the base currency and therefore converted currency, then the alternative payment gateway and third-party payment gateway wouldn't show because they can't convert. So it would be Shopify Payments, so card processing, and then if there are any of the I always get the terminology wrong, the regional specific payment gateways that are part of Shopify Payments, so like Klarna and so forth, and those kind of things come into that bracket for certain countries that would then also display PayPal as well.
That's it, thank you.
Great. Then Jordan was asking about the domains and domain related like restrictions. Jordan, kindly, do you still need help with those, or how do you feel? Anything you can embed?
It would be nice to know if I'm correct in my observation that our business is registered in Finland, so our country setting is Finland. Therefore, when we choose which country our primary market is in, we can only choose from other countries which share the same currency. So of course we choose Finland because we are in Finland, and that means that our primary domain must be assigned, and it must be a top-level domain. And it cannot be .fi because that is a country-specific domain, and therefore we don't really have a .fi for our own country. I mean, yes, it forwards to .com, but that's a little bit strange. And also, it would be nice, maybe it's not correct, but it would be nice to assign .com to, let's say, the biggest international market for our business, which would be United States. We would love to customize content. Well, we do customize content. But if we make a domain for the United States, which is its own domain, we would then need to choose, .us or something, and it would just be more comfortable for people in that market to use .com. And they do, but they're essentially just viewing. Well, there's a lot of issues with that, but it is correct that we cannot have FI as a primary, right? And that seems a bit strange for being in Finland.
So yeah, so I might be missing something, but I don't think it is correct. I think because .fi is the ccTLD for Finland, you can connect the .fi to your Shopify admin. And if you then connected...
I'm sorry, if you use a country-specific domain for your primary, then any of your international markets cannot be subfolders underneath that. So there is no such thing as .fi/en-us. And that would mean that all of our other markets would need to just forward to our primary market, or they would need to have their own primary domains. Subfolders are off the table for a country-specific primary domain.
So you can specify what type of domain allocates to each individual market. So you could have your Finnish market have the .fi. If you then have the ccTLD for the US, like being the .com, you could have the .com allocate to your US market in Shopify Markets by just allocating a different domain to that market. But then are you talking about other countries where you don't have the ccTLD? You then choose subdirectory.
That's a good setup, what you just mentioned. And then let's say France. Well, now we have to get a whole new domain name or have them go to the primary market, which is Finland. And we don't want a new domain for every country because we want our SEO to build upon itself. And we also don't want to be sending French people to the Finnish market.
Yes, I understand that issue. And Ben, hey, Jordan, due to that, we have a limited time here. Please contact me after this one. We can definitely have a look this with our markets team and see that where we can help. So I think that we can find a solution here. Just be in touch with me after this session, and we can agree a time when we look at this. And then there was another question related still to marketing automation and Shopify Markets and Google Performance Max, how to make it work. So yes, our growth team has been working a lot with that. Still the support from the sort of like Google side is not complete, and it's very important that you choose the right catalog or channel app for the catalogs there. So if you need further assistance with that, please be in touch with us, and we can then try to guide you through that. But yeah, it is possible to get both Google and Meta advertising working well with markets. We have multiple cases there, but it's not just like very straightforward yet. And then definitely with Ben, we both hope that it will be easier still this year. There are tons of questions here, but due to the time limitation, I have to end this webinar. We will take all of your questions here, and we try to answer as many as we only can later on. So we will tackle this with Ben and then get back to you. If you are in great urgency, please be in touch directly with us and we can look these matters one by one. Thank you, Ben, for all of your time, and also thank you for all of these questions. There are more questions than we have ever received. This might be the record, so definitely markets is a very hot topic. If you have more questions regarding Woolman, you can anytime visit our website, and we also have our Commerce Insights podcast every single Monday. There are 2 separate episodes already there where we're talking about Shopify Markets. So thank you for today. Wishing you a really nice afternoon and hope to see you soon. Take care. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for having me. Take care.